Coming up on The W Show, we dive into a mid-season review. Who has exceeded expectations and who has been the biggest disappointment? The Score Assist makes headlines for all the wrong reasons. Plus, former Carlton coach and Hawthorn champion Daniel Harford joins us on the panel. You're watching The W Show thanks to NAB. Great to have your company. We have so much to get through, so let's introduce our bumper panel for today. Award-winning journalist Sarah Black is with us as always. Sarah, are you absolutely footy fatigued?
I'm a little bit footy fatigued. I'm not sure how the players are going, but there's been a lot of consumption.
We are also lucky enough to have Daniel Harford with us. Harf, great to have you on the W Show.
About time, just by the way. About time. And next time I'm going to wear a jumpsuit like that.
How good is it?
How good's that look?
I know, I'd actually love to see you in a jumpsuit. What colour would you go for?
Hot pink.
All right, let's get into it. Enough about jumpsuits. Let's get straight into what's been making headlines. And we had a couple of matches last night. The Hawks, well, they fly into second place on the ladder. They've got 5 wins for the season. They look like they're finals bound, and certainly those young Hawks look like they're having an absolute ball. They've got the Hawk selfies going, the Hawk celebrations. Eliza West there, a new recruit, absolutely smashing it at the moment. And then after that game, we had the Bombers beating the Sydney Swans at Whitten Oval. And Sarah, their forwards really did the damage.
The question coming into this period of the season without Bonnie Toogood would be how Essendon were going to cope. And they've done really well. They're nearly through it without Bon. Elise Gamble kicked 1 goal against Adelaide, 2 against Sydney and Melbourne. Paige Scott's been a really nice linking player. Yeah. She hasn't necessarily got on the scoreboard, but they've marked really well. 7 marks last night. And Daria Bannister with the 4 goals against the D's, not quite as prolific against Sydney. So they've managed to paper the gaps, and it could be a case of long-term gain for the Bombers here.
So Bonnie Toogood, their co-captain, is a test this week with that knee issue. Harf, if you're the coach, are you going to play her against the Gold Coast Suns on Sunday?
I would want to be 100% correct that she's right to go.
Yep.
She's way too valuable to risk. A dominant force there. See her on the bench last night celebrating with the team. But I tell you what, she's the pivot to the whole thing. If they're going to succeed in the finals, they get to that point, Bonnie Toogood's going to be the key to that. So if there's any question mark whatsoever, we just keep her on ice for another week and get her ready.
Well, she sat there a few weeks ago where you were sitting and she was like, I want to come back in 6 weeks from this MCL, similar to Libby Birch. So she's certainly out there to achieve that. More injuries though, I mean, and they're to star players, Sarah. It's been absolutely horrible at the moment. Emma Carney, obviously North Melbourne skipper. We'll talk about her in a little bit more depth in just a moment. 6 weeks with the high-grade hamstring. Ali Morfitt's gone down, the All-Australian ruck with that fractured foot. Sophie Vanderhoovel, her season is over from the Bombers. And Amy McDonald's the other one with a hamstring from Geelong, who's an absolute star. First and foremost, Emma Carney, I mean, when she comes back, 6 weeks' time, it could be what, first week, maybe second week of finals.
If there's a player back in to return ahead of time, it is Emma Carney. She is 35, and the only footy she's ever missed prior to this was being an MCL, which was a contact injury, and she played through a lot of that, came back quite early for that as well. So, you know, the Roos, it's going to be a huge task to replace Carney. I expect Lulu Puller will come back into the side, play on the wing, half back. You know, they'll be able to manage it, but it's a bit of a concern with this condensed footy period. It was the 3rd game Carney had played in 9-10 games, very wet conditions, and first serious soft tissue issue.
I mean, Amy McDonald too, like we're looking at this condensed fixture and there have been a lot of injuries. She's a big loss for the Cats at the moment who have really struggled. How have you seen, I guess, the injury toll during this period?
I'm keeping an eye on it. It's what I'm doing because I think it's a relevant conversation to have when we reflect upon this phase of the fixture, this 4-week condensed fixture. And you've got players like Carney and McDonald who are really well-conditioned bodies, been doing this for a long time and have had no real soft tissue history before. To have that happen would suggest that there's some red flags somewhere about how players are having to work through this phase of the calendar and what we can do to safeguard against that going forward.
Yeah, the strength and conditioning staff are certainly working overtime. Now, the AFL has admitted the smart ball technology made an error. That was during the Gold Coast and Collingwood game. So the Pies won this game by 3 points. You can see in the second quarter here that Jamie Stanton has a shot at goal. It looks to us like it was a goal. Half you were actually commentating this game, but it was overturned. Sarah, Take me through how this actually happened.
So the process is there's the chip in the ball. We all know about the chip. The chip's read a little, there's been a spike, a hotspot, whether that thought it was Atkinson coming across or Stanton herself smothering the footy. And then it's up to the operator to double check with some vision of the ground and going, okay, this is spiked. Let's make sure that this is correct. And the operator has only checked one angle, not a second angle, which would have proven that it was in fact a goal. So the process is there, the process wasn't followed. What I'd like to see is, some checks and balances in their half to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because while Gold Coast made a series of blunders in that game, if you look at the raw score, they deserved another 6 points.
Yeah, well, and 4 points, importantly on the ladder, would have been their first win for the season. So that's a concern, I reckon. And you're going to get some teething problems with this technology because it's brand new, although it has been tested at different levels. So there might be a concern. We've seen that one there. Like, the problem for me is there was heaps of time to sort that out. There was call to goal, so the ball went back to the centre. So there's a minute 30 or whatever, a minute or so before the game's restarted. The ball is glitched, the chip is glitched, called a deviation when there wasn't a deviation, and then the operator, as you said, just checked the one angle. So that's the problem. So there's two problems here. And we've had time to sort it out before the game was restarted back in the centre of the ground. So I spoke to Mark Evans, the CEO of the Gold Coast, on Tuesday morning, and all he wanted was some transparency and a level of understanding of how this happens.
Yep.
And so we know that the Gold Coast Suns actually came into AFL House on Tuesday as well, and they were taken through the process. They released a statement. It was a pretty strong statement as well. And this isn't the first time the score assist has actually decided the result in a Gold Coast game, because as we recall, they lost a game to Carlton. Maddie Gearin had a shot close to the end of the game. Daisy Darcy was deemed to not have touched it before the ball crossed the line. But I'm sitting here now, and if I'm the Gold Coast Suns, I'm starting to doubt whether you can actually trust that decision also was true, Half. How can we trust the technology, which I understand too, that the chip will learn and continue to learn the more data it collects. It's sort of AI technology, but at this point, can we trust it?
Yeah, I think that's a relevant question for the Gold Coast to be asking, because we don't see anything. We're taking full trust that the people operating the system are correct. We don't see any, like in the men's competition where we see the video replays, we don't see that. And hopefully at some stage there is a level of visibility for not only the coaching staff and the players, but also the viewer. Engage the viewer in this sort of stuff. That's another level you can engage your viewership with. So I think there's some layers we can add to this to make it a better system, but I think Gold Coast could quite rightly ask that question.
It's something we see in cricket and tennis, Nat. The Hawkeye for the cricket. When, is that ball in line with the stumps? As a viewer, you can actually see that. The players themselves can see it on the ground as well when it's broadcast up on the big screen. So it's something we've been talking about for a couple of weeks, this need for clarity and vision, so we and the players have a better understanding what's going on.
So I think the AFL is very aware of that, and they will look to bring that in. When that comes, we're still unsure. But right now, as it stands, we are in the middle of week 6 of the AFLW competition. It's midway through the season as we take a look at the ladder here. The Kangaroos sitting pretty on top. Hawks, as I mentioned, in second. Down the other end, you've got the Gold Coast. Collingwood obviously been hit really hard with injuries. St Kilda in the top 8 at the moment. They've still got a game in hand as well to play after they missed finals by percentage last year. So we're going to take a look at a mid-season review, and what we're going to look at first is the clubs that are exceeding expectations. And we want to start with the Western Bulldogs, Sarah, because last year they won just the one game. We probably predicted they wouldn't win any games this year after the list turnover and some other issues they've had. But they've won 2 games, back-to-back games.
Yeah, they've been fantastic, the Doggies, after a really shaky start. Losses to GWS, Collingwood and West Coast, and we thought that might be it. But what I've really loved, Half, is the forward pressure they've applied around the ground. Pressures are non-negotiable regardless of skill and expectation. And it's had a flow-on effect to the scoreboard. They've managed to do really well.
And we didn't see it the first 2 weeks. That's the thing with the Dogs. They've been able to transform their form, pardon the pun, through pressure. It was the game against Brisbane they lost, was the one that started to turn things for me. They were fantastic with their heat on the Brisbane Lions in that second half of that game. And then all of a sudden they've carried that into the last couple of weeks and got some reward on the scoreboard and on the ladder. So it's been a terrific turnaround in a couple of weeks for the Dogs.
And great to see the likes of Jess Fitzgerald stepping up in the midfield as well, Sarah Hartwig, Heidi Woodley, and even Christy Lee Weston-Turner, the number 1 draft pick, getting around the goals as well. Hawthorn is another side that really is exceeding expectations, Half. They're 5-1, and often it takes a while for a new game plan to actually click under a new coach in Daniel Webster, but the Hawks have taken to it like a duck to water.
Yeah, well, they added some really important players, I reckon Eliza West is the recruit of the year.
Yeah.
I think she's a gun and absolutely creates great opportunities for this excellent midfield of the Hawks to get out into space. And that's what I've noticed with Dan Webster's plan. They're happy to play a bit more expansive than perhaps the previous edition of the Hawks in the AFLW, and they're getting great reward. You see this, good width, open the ground up, and then use your players with leg speed and skill, and you move the ball against oppositions who have to chase and have to defend. And they've done this magnificently. And then you've got players like Gilroy, I reckon's out of the heap forward of the ball, and able to hit the scoreboard from range. Has such a long kick, which is a real transformative factor, I reckon, in women's footy a lot. If you can cover the packs of a lot of players. She's one, and I'm a massive fan for Anya McDonough. Like, I think she's an absolute star of the future, let alone the fact she's playing really well at the moment. He's got a good balanced lineup. He's put a good plan in place, and they're on board at the moment.
And Jazz Fleming too, just with that run and bounce. I know she got caught a couple of times last night, but that and her ability to take another step, Sarah, is really key too.
For sure, and I think the addition of Eliza West has really helped in there, and initially Casey Sheriff as well.
Yes.
Just providing a bit of bulk around the contest for Jazz to get on the outside. She's also leading the Hawks in inside 50 entries this year, which I think is really telling in terms of that quality ball movement.
Now we have to talk about Fremantle, because last year they were 4 and 6 for the season. They didn't make finals, and then coming into this season, they obviously had Kiara Bowers, who's inactive at the moment due to pregnancy. Their skipper, their new skipper, Ange Stannett, went down with a knee injury, and then they've obviously lost Anya Tai to an ACL a couple of weeks ago, which is a massive blow, but somehow they've managed to hold it all together. And Sarah, it's their recruiting that really has been the standout, hasn't it?
Yeah, full props to the recruiting team. They've done a power of work to identify the holes and recruit accordingly. So Tanisha Kikoak, I'm really struggling with that name. Kikoak. She's the one who's filled the void there in the absence of Anya Tai. She's only 19 from Tassie. Ash Brazel is in vintage touch. It's amazing what can happen when you haven't had a full season in netball beforehand. And then Gab Newton and Ash McCarthy have provided a lot of grunt as well. I've been really impressed with how they've just sort of revitalised that Fremantle group.
Yeah, a great recruiting drive by Fremantle to get those players in. Kikoak's, I saw her first time live Tuesday night at GMHBA, and she's a very impressive athlete.
Yeah, she's very strong.
Me. Yeah, I'd like to have her on the list somewhere. She's good fun to watch. But you mentioned the other three, Brazel, Newton and McCarthy. Huge balance to the lineup. They've got one key back. They've got two mids. Gab can go forward and play a role. She floated back as the extra defender a little bit late in the game against Geelong. Really well balanced. And we're all talking about Daisy in the West, but Lisa Webb needs some love, because how she turned that game around at half time on the weekend was brilliant.
No, you're right. And we will talk about Daisy's Eagles now, because they are the other club that is exceeding expectations. Coming into 2024, they had won 5 games across 3 seasons. They have already won 4 games of football in 2024. We'll get to the Daisy effect in just a moment, but the likes of Ella Roberts and Bella Lewis as well, they've taken big steps, and I'm a big fan of Ella Roberts.
Yeah, well, it's hard not to be of Ella Roberts. I mean, she's an immense talent, isn't she? And she's going to be one of the highlight players for a long time. I mean, but players like Jess Hosking coming in and having a real impact as well. Love the impact that she's having so far. Kelly Gibson's been really good in the forward line as well. But they're structured, they're confident in the system, and they're just embracing what they're being fed at the moment from Daisy and the coaching staff. And it's paying dividends. They're getting reward for their effort. They get to lick the ice cream every now and then. They get the 4 points, which is lick the ice cream. And it's great. It reinforces all the things that they're doing, and they'll keep repeating it until such time as they start to really battle, and then they might find a way off the track. But at the moment, it's terrific to watch the development of this crew. And
the culture too, I think, Sarah, has been a big thing that Daisy has brought in and tried to lift when it comes to the West Coast Eagles.
For sure. I think, you see it in the players' faces. They're just having fun with their footy. And if you're having fun, that means you're much more likely to play with confidence and spirit and enthusiasm. So they've done really well. I just wanted to add another player to the mix there, Ali Drennan. I think her addition has helped Ella Roberts and Bella Lewis blossom, because she does a lot of hard work that gets unsighted, that allows those girls to accelerate on the outside.
Cool.
Now, it's been a big week for the West Coast Eagles, because they announced a new men's coach in Minnie McQualter. Andrew McQualter, obviously a former St Kilda player and an assistant at Richmond. So between Minnie and Daisy, they are the youngest coaching duo in the league right now, and there's so much upside for this powerhouse club in West Coast. Half, my question to you with Daisy, and we've all talked about the Daisy impact, and she's making back page, front page headlines all around, which is fantastic for women's football in WA and the competition. But is she on track, do you think, to become the first female coach of a men's side when we're looking, say, 5 years down the track?
Well, she's closest at the moment, isn't she? She's the only one really in the game it's close to that. I think we just parked that conversation, I must admit. I think Daisy needs to find herself as a coach, and she's doing that magnificently this first year at the West Coast Eagles, but this is her first crack at it. So let's watch her grow and develop and build culture and build system and build a club, which she's doing a hell of a job at the first start. But I reckon we parked that conversation. Aspirationally, we would love to see it, wouldn't we? We'd love to see Daisy or someone in that position take a men's role down the track if they're the best person for that job. But I just think we parked that and watch her do her thing and really enjoy how she grows as a coach. She's had a great apprenticeship under Mick Stanier just in recent years in the AFLW, let alone what she was doing in the old VWFL.
Yes.
So she's been doing this for a while. Great footy head. We've seen that through her commentary and coverage. But I'm really keen to just watch her grow before I have to worry about what happens in 5 years' time. Let her take this grip to something.
Do we have to be mindful of putting that pressure on her? Because it is what we're talking about, and people will obviously gravitate towards her. And she's been a trailblazer in so many ways, but that can take a toll in itself, can't it?
Yeah, I would be mindful of that, but I think Daisy's pretty capable of dealing with most things that are thrown at her and have been thrown at her through her career, Sarah. It'd be a great day for that to happen, but I'm really keen for her to just find her feet as a coach, really comfortable, and then the next phase will take care of itself.
And one thing I think we should be keeping an eye on, Nat, is the fact that Daisy's not the only one who's had the only woman who's had experience in men's programs. So there is that program running at the moment. Emma Carney's one. She's a development coach at North Melbourne. So why should we blinker on Daisy? Why look a little bit broader?
Alicia Reeva's another one.
Exactly.
Who's doing great things in coaching.
And VFL obviously coached the men's program as well. All right, it's time to move on to the clubs that are falling short. So the disappointment so far of 2024, and it's hard to go past Melbourne because, as we know, they've been a powerhouse of the AFLW competition for such a long time. But Sarah, when we look at their injury list, and they finished second last season, they're 1-4 to start 2024. It's the worst start to a season in the AFLW history, but you can't avoid looking at this injury list and thinking that's an excuse.
Certainly not. So I think if you just look at it, Jacinta Hose and Amy Mackin are inactive, so they have been replaced within the 30. But, we keep coming back to this conversation about list sizes, Nat, that, teams are getting really restricted in what they can and can't do. Liv Purcell back in 2 to 3 weeks is fantastic for the Ds. She's been a massive loss. They're going to be playing Sarah Darcy tonight as a top-up player, so great news for Sarah, which I think you might have crossed paths with her at the Pies half.
I did, early doors, yes, season 2 with Sarah at the Pies before she went to the Tigers.
But it's been really hard for Mick Stanier to just juggle the magnets. It's been impossible to get anything going.
Well, don't worry about juggling the magnets on game day.
Finding enough magnets.
Try and run a training session.
Yeah.
Try and run an effective training session with that number of players out there in the park. So you've got 10 or 12 there on the list that can't play anyway, can't train anyway, let alone the fact the ones that are sore or might just need a night off after a condensed fixture. You'd be running a session for 2 or 3 weeks with 12, 14 players.
You can't even do match sim,
Good
can
luck.
you, with that?
Good luck trying to make that an effective session. So it's a real challenge for Mick Stanier and the Ds at the moment. Not all those names, as you said, we knew there was going to be a couple off the list already, and not all of them are best 21 players. But when you've got a good chunk, there's 7 or 8 of them, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's really tough. Geelong is the other one that's been really disappointing. They lost a preliminary final to the Brisbane Lions by 4 points last season. They were tipped to be a top 4 side in 2024. They have halved just the 1 win so far. Yes, they have a 2 points for a draw, but it's their ruck and their midfield that's really struggled this year.
Yeah, well, they've got no rucks. They've had to put hybrids in there. I mean, I was there Tuesday night watching, as I said before, and seeing the effect Min Strom had for Fremantle and the dominance she had in that position and the access she gave to her mids on the back of that. And then you take out Amy McDonald from Geelong's perspective. Like, it's a real challenge. They've got to try to find different ways, different pieces of the puzzle to put in to make it work. Darcy Maloney's gone through there, Becky Webster's gone through there, but Gab Featherston's your backup ruck.
Yep.
Kate Darby's your number 1 ruck.
And she's doing a great job, but it's
doing
tough,
a hell of a
isn't
job.
it?
But she's 170 centimetres and trying to jump over everyone and body on. So it's a real stretch for them at the moment, pardon the pun again, for the Cats to find someone big enough to cause some damage at stoppage.
And there's another layer there too, Half, because if you don't have the rucks, providing it to you on a silver platter, Georgie Press-Barkas has been carrying a quad injury all year. Her numbers are significantly down. She's down 5.7 in her disposals and 3.3 in clearances year on year. So, and there's a real flow-on effect. Then the defence is under pressure. It's all starting in the middle of the ground.
And it means there's a heap more heat on Nina Morrison and the expectation upon her. And she's doing a power of work. I think she's been fantastic, but she's doing a power of work with no real support.
And the last disappointment we're going to touch on this episode is the Gold Coast Suns. Now, they are winless. We spoke about that at the top of the show. And they made finals last year and they just haven't lived up to the expectation and the hype that we had all expected. And their goal accuracy is actually horrible and it's costing them games because they've lost a couple of games by under a kick. And I mean, what's going wrong? Like, how do you fix that?
No, well, confidence plays a part in this. Technique plays a part in this. Fundamentals plays a part in this. But in the end, bad kicking is bad footy. And Jamie Stanton had a nice moment late against the Giants in this game to draw it, kicking a set shot under enormous pressure. But they've been pretty ordinary, as you see, in front of goal in 2024. 16% is a disaster. Like, you can't coach that.
Yeah.
In game day, you can do nothing about that. You're backing your players to have had the practice to be able to execute on those moments. And if they don't, what do you do about that? There's not much you can do to fix that. But I have been disappointed in the Gold Coast Suns, I must admit. I expected a bit more of them this season. Their post-clearance work's been pretty average in my eye. I haven't been able to get contest to contest as they did last year, and they found themselves in a horrible position.
As you get ready to go to the deep dive, Sarah, it's just some of those players that haven't taken another step. I mean, Charlie Rowbottom's a star, but I feel like even Claudia Whitford's, I mean, she's carrying something at the moment, but hasn't gone to the levels that she had last year. Like, where is that next tier coming from?
Yeah, well, Whitford missed the game against Hawthorn with concussion and is also carrying a bit of a jarred knee. So that's affecting her numbers there. Lucy Single's been patchy. She's also had a concussion in there. I mentioned Ali Drennan earlier. I don't think we gave her enough respect when she was at the Suns because you take her out of that midfield mix and they're really struggling. Their three leading goal kickers last year, Tara Bahana, Jamie Stanton and Jack DePay, they're all down half in their average goal kicking output. Down 50%, I should say. So, you know, it's not getting forward and then the forwards aren't producing enough either. Well,
another club that hasn't quite hit the heights that they would have wanted to is Carlton. They're 2 wins from 6 games so far this season. And Gemma, as we get to you for the deep dive, it looks like they've been all at sea since they lost their skipper.
Yeah, since captain Karen Peterson has come out of Carlton's defence 3 games ago, they've kind of fallen to pieces a little bit. We've got some numbers that have blown out since she's gotten that shoulder injury. How important is organisation and a leader back there?
Oh, it's the key to everything, isn't it? Behind the ball, how often do we hear it in footy talk about someone guiding things and managing things behind the ball? Karen Peterson's been doing that for years at the Blues and she's a star at it. She organises things vocally, we're pointing fingers, gestures and physical actions as well, but she also plays a pretty pivotal role as one of the 5 defenders.
Yeah.
And without that happening, they're big numbers. 58.7 points against a game is a big number for any team, let alone the Blues in the last couple of years. So that's a real concern at the moment.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of examples of vision of that organisation. Gemma Houghton, they're very vulnerable to that key defender, a key forward taking those marks. Gemma Houghton, she's got that beautiful combination of athleticism and strength. It's hard to defend, isn't it?
Yeah, my word it is. Yaz Dersma tried a couple of times on this occasion, not able to get there. She's on the move. She's pretty hard to stop, full stop, Gemma Houghton, like she was last week in this game. So that's a problem. But Cordner tried, Dersma tried, Maddie Hendry tried. They couldn't find a way to stop her. And without someone like Kez just organising the system up the ground a little bit as well, it makes it harder on those one-on-one defenders.
And the organisation factor comes in a couple of different ways. Here's the first example. We see Alice O'Loughlin has a free kick. Carlton's actually relatively well set up.
This
They've
is
got
a great
representation.
Setup. Great setup. You've got a mid pushing back here. You've got Darcy playing on the open side wing with their opponent referencing pretty nicely, and you've got a spare sitting in the hole.
So if we roll the vision, what actually happens is everyone comes up to the footy, leaves someone on the ground, goal against.
Yeah, spare gets caught underneath, Gopan gets caught underneath, Darcy comes in, doesn't impact the contest. Their opponent sitting there at the end of it, waiting at the back, just waiting for a chance for the ball to spill. Tess Craven kicks a really easy goal. That's a disaster from a defensive setup perspective.
And if you're Kez watching that happen, you probably stay on the deck, don't you?
Well, you absolutely do. Absolutely do. Make sure you've got, if someone's going to go up and impact, and just watch their position, see the body language of the player coming to the ball, watch their position. If they're going to get there, stay down. If they're not, you might have to go up and help.
Yeah, and we've got another example that shows it in a different way. North Melbourne gets the ball forward, just a free 50 for them.
Look at this, flat, really flat. There's no layers to the Carlton defence on that occasion. It's happened a couple of times. It was 2 or 3 times in this game in particular. And when you're playing a good team, you can move the ball really quickly like the Kangaroos can. That's going to cost you goals on the way back.
Yeah, and I'm pretty worried this weekend against Brisbane. They've got Eleanor Hartill, Taylor Smith and Dakota Davidson as the talls, and then you've got Sophie Conway coming in from the wing. It's a pretty dangerous forward line. I'm worried for the Blues.
Size and speed, that's a problem.
Size and speed, problem.
Certainly going to be a massive challenge for the Blues, thanks to Gemma, best in the business, making a very nice duo there with Daniel Harford. But it is time now for NAB Star Power, and it's none other than the Brisbane Lions as an entire football club, because right now they hold the AFLW Premiership Cup and and of course the men's, the AFL Premiership Cup at the same time, which is just phenomenal. And Sarah, the AFLW side beat Adelaide at the weekend. They've won 5 straight games now after dropping that first game to North Melbourne, and geez, they're looking hot, aren't they?
They really are. You know, you sort of were a little bit uncertain with how easily they were blown out of the water against North Melbourne, but they've really rallied. I think Stas was on a bit of a mission to tidy up a few things around there, and they have done that brilliantly.
Are they the best team in at half? Because I find it really hard to separate the Lions, North and Adelaide, who I don't feel like we talk about enough.
Yeah, well, that game just in particular was the highlight of the season for me.
Oh, so good.
Hawthorn-Geelong was great, but that was an epic battle. So right under both teams there. I'm still on Adelaide, I must admit. Defence wins premierships. I think Adelaide got the best settled lineup behind the ball, let alone the fact they got midfield star power. So if I'm leaning to one team, I haven't mentioned the Kangaroos, leaning to one team at this stage, midway through, I'd be still backing Adelaide to go deep and cause a bit of havoc in the finals.
I just keep coming back to round one and North Melbourne absolutely poleaxing the Lions, Sarah. So that keeps coming back to mind, and they'll still be in it if they can get their skipper Emma Carney back in time. Let's take a look at what is still to come in week 6. It is a footy bonanza. We've got games tonight, obviously Melbourne and the Giants going head to head. Friday night footy as well. West Coast Port Adelaide is quite an intriguing game, Sarah.
It'll be a good measuring stick as to where Port Adelaide are, I think. You know, they really put the foot down against the Blues, and it would have taken a lot of confidence out of that game, but the Eagles are a little bit sturdier, I think, than Carlton at the moment.
And then looking to Sunday, the pick of the match, I think there is Freo against Hawthorn. This one could be a top 4 battle half.
No doubt. I think one of these teams will finish top 4 by the end of the season. The ladder, the predictor that I've done, it's just a matter of who wins that game. So I think the winner of that game plays top 4, finishes top 4 in the end of the season.
Love a ladder predictor. You can get that on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app, of course. Harf, thanks so much for coming in. It's been a joy to have you here.
It's nice to be a part of a great team.
Can't wait to see you in a pink jumpsuit next time. Sarah Black, love your work as always.
Love your work.
And thank you so much for joining us on The W Show. Thanks to Nab. We'll see you again next week.
Want to get all the latest footy news in one hit? From injuries to breaking news, the latest from the coaches, the Footy Feed team has you covered. Watch it now on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app, or wherever you get your podcasts.